Welcome everyone to our Lake Stewardship Workshop. I'm Jim Irwin, Chair of the Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve. I'll be hosting, and Dennis Hodgson and Daryl Kynes will be assisting. To begin with, I would like to acknowledge that the Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve is in Treaty 2 and 4 territories of the Anishinaabe people, and say that we respect and share their all-important teachings that water is a sacred gift, essential for all life. Since 1986, the Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve has been bringing people together to share their knowledge for the well-being of our communities. In this respect, we're pleased to have Laura Gilbert share her work with the Water Rangers organization. Laura is pursuing her PhD in ecological economics at McGill University, studying how our values affect water stewardship. She joined the Water Rangers team in September 2019 and has been working as their community and research coordinator ever since. Laura's presentation is entitled Community-Based Water Monitoring with Water Rangers Test Kits and Data Platform. We're looking forward to your presentation. Laura, go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks everyone for taking the time to be here tonight. So as Jim said, I work for a nonprofit called Water Rangers. We're mostly based in Ontario. And today I'll give you a little bit of a run through of who we are, what we do. I'll talk to you about our platform, our cell phone app, and also walk you through our water quality test kit, which are available on our website if you're ever interested. And also I'll talk to you about our educational program in case that's something that might be of interest to you as well. I will admit I usually do these presentations more for high school students, so I think everyone in here has probably more knowledge of water sciences than I do. Feel free to ask me questions, but I may not be able to answer everything. So I may have to get back to you on a lot of things. As Jim said, I do welcome questions during the presentation. It might be easier to just write them out in the chat. I'll be monitoring it. And if you have any questions about what I'm doing, you want me to slow down or re-explain things, then please feel free to share that. Or if you have any insights you want to share with the group, feel free to do that as well. Don't feel like you're interrupting me. I'm used to it. So welcome everyone. So as I said, I work for the nonprofit Water Rangers, and it's actually got an interesting story as to how we get started. So I'm just going to start with that. So it started in 2015 when our executive director, her name's Kat, she used to go out testing on Lake McLaughlin with her father every summer, who was part of the Lake McLaughlin Association. So Lake McLaughlin is in Val-des-Monts, which is on the Quebec side close to Ottawa, just to give you a little bit of geography there. And he would take some water samples. He would then send them to the lab. Lab would take about a week to get back the results. And then they would send them to the Lake Association, and they would just publish the results as a report at the end of the summer. So if there was anything wrong with the lake, he wouldn't really know the information until the end of the season. And not only that, he wasn't a scientist himself, so he wouldn't necessarily always understand the language that was being used or what the lab results really meant. And whenever his neighbors were asking him, like, hey, is the water healthy? How can I help support you in your tests or make the water healthier? He didn't really know how to answer them. So all of that led Kat to, first of all, create an online platform for people to be able to share that data, that water quality data, in a way that made it really easy and accessible for everyone to be able to understand it. And it then led to the creation of these super easy to use test kits to just help people gather baseline data about different water bodies. So I'm going to share my screen now. If I go fuzzy or I go slow, just let me know. I'm not going to be able to see the chat very well now, so if you have a question, feel free to to just unmute yourself and ask away. So this is our platform, which is just app.waterrangers.ca. And I was asked if there were any observations in Manitoba, and I had to double check. So I thought I would show you. There isn't very much right now in Manitoba, just a few around Winnipeg, Brandon, and this area, which I don't know, but I'm sure most of you know. Most of our data is concentrated in Eastern Canada, so a lot of it in Ontario. And I was saying that we have quite a few users in Southern United States, and we have also growing users in Mexico. We have a group that uses it, and actually some in Brazil. I don't know if they use the website, a little bit. There's some here. So our test kits are actually available in French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese, if you know anyone that's interested. So how it works is that each of these little spots, so this corresponds to one observation, and I've actually already added some to show you, but I'll walk you through that after. So you would be able to see all of the data at a location, and you could also add your own in there. But first, what you have to do is create a profile. So for example, this is just my profile. So I would have all of my observations associated to me on here. And I would be able to do different things like edit my observations, add new ones. And I can also report what we call issues. So these could be pollution events that you notice, either water pollution, or you can also report large amounts of trash. And if in an area there's a group that can help you resolve that, you can assign that issue to that group for them to look into it for you. What did I have here? Oh, this was one of the areas that was monitored in Manitoba, but it was just from somebody in Ontario. I actually know him. So what's really interesting on the platform is that you can create groups to help you manage different volunteers to put some data on there. You don't have to use our test kits to put your data on there. You can just create a group, add your own data that you measure with your own equipment. So this is just an example of a group that I manage. So you would have different people here associated to the group, a summary of everything here. And as a group manager, I have a lot more kind of things that I can do. I can edit other people's observations. So if I see that somebody's making a mistake, I can go in and fix that for them. I can invite people to join the group. I can create a region. I didn't do it for this one, but you could create a region as to where you're testing to let everyone know exactly where you are testing. I will not save this, but this one was in Ontario, so you could just draw it. If you were just doing around a lake, you could do that as well. You can customize what we call our observation forms. So if you're only testing very specific parameters, then you can say what they are exactly. You can say you're using a Water Rangers test kit, and then it will just show you our standard observation form, or you have all of the different tests that you can input in there, and you would just drag them onto here, and then they would show up on your phone or on the computer when you associate an observation with this group, so you can easily fill in all of that. So these are just some things you can do as a group admin. And we have a lot of groups that are using our platform. So we have over 150 groups. And this is just some examples of all of the groups that use them. And some of them have quite a few observations. So they go out and they test regularly. So we have in Alabama some people that go out and test all year round. So they have over 1,600 data points in there. And if you were interested in adding your own group, you would just go to the group page. That's where I'm at. And then you would click find out more. It would give you all of the different information. And the cool thing is that when you're in a group, you have the option here to share your data with DataStream, which is I'm sure most of you are familiar with DataStream, a really big online Canadian platform for all data relating to water. So all of the data that you collect as part of this group will be quality controlled on our end. And once we deem it good, we'll push it onto the DataStream platform. So you would fill in all of this information for your group, and then you'd be able to create it and start inviting people to join it. This is an example of a group that uses it. So the University of Regina. We actually have a special research project with them. So they have a slightly different test kit than we have on the website. I was just telling the folks about it before the meeting started. So they have really high pH lakes. So they need special equipment to measure the pH that we don't usually include in our test kits. But you can see this just started and they already have 180 observations. You can go visit their website. They also have an email where you can reach them. So this is a great way if you have a few members of a community that want to start a group and share all that information with everyone. It's really great to have these groups for everyone. So what happens if you go to a certain location? So I think I have opened up Loch Leven here. Yeah, Loch Leven. So you could see on the previous page, they had 30 observation. So if I click on it to view the location summary, this is what it looks like for a place that's been monitored consistently. So you can see observation summary. So people have reported different mammals, reptiles, birds, and amphibians they've seen. And you also get these nice little spark charts that form over time as you gather data for a spot. So the pH range from 8.4 to 8.9, the water temperature. So these are just standard things we measure: air temperature, the Secchi depth for the clarity, conductivity, alkalinity, all these pretty standard things. And these just help you detect any patterns that might be related to weather changes, or in some cases when there's a really high spike, like the conductivity here that really spiked. You might be wondering why. So it might lead you to do some investigation to try to see if, like, let's say there was a really big storm that could have brought in some sediment and increased the conductivity there. So you could write that down. So as I mentioned before, you can also add issues on there. You don't only have to do water quality, which is really great. So in the issues right here, you can see everything that's been reported. And as I said, you can report them specifically to groups. So one of the groups that has a lot of issues reported to them is Mobile Bay Keeper. They're really big in Alabama, and they take care of a lot of the issues that pop up. And so, for example, I pulled one up like this. Oh, this one's in Ontario. So somebody detected a lot of algae, and they just wrote some notes as to what happened. So they're like, in this case, I don't think it's toxic. This is why. They included some photos, but they still wanted to report that there was a really large amount of algae. And they just included some photos, and they reported it to Ottawa Riverkeeper, Riverwatch, which is a group in their region. This is another example. So Mobile Bay Keeper. So somebody reported all of this algae to them, and they actually wrote a nice explanation saying that they are issuing special warning right now because of some pollution in Perdido Bay, and they're telling people not to go swim because there's an algae bloom. And so they actually responded to this person, letting them know what was going on, and then they marked the issue as resolved. So this is a nice example of how you can communicate different issues with people in your community that might be using the platform. Okay, that's it for right now. I'm going to show you the phone app later because I don't want you to just stare at the screen and for it to not be super interactive for a long time. So I'm going to walk you through the test kit now. Maybe before I do that, are there any questions about the platform or what I showed you online? So far, so good? Okay. So let me just move my setup a little bit. So this is our most popular test kit. It's what we call the Freshwater Explorer test kit. And it just has some tools to help you measure different baseline parameters. So some of what I showed you, I'll walk you through how to use it quickly. It's kind of fun to see, and I'm sure you'll have some questions about it after I show you. We do want everything to be super, super easy to use. That's what we really aim for from the platform to the test kit. So I have the French one, not French this time, English. We include a guide in each test kit that has lots of great images and really explains everything to you. So how to do each test, and also what normal values are for each test that you would be doing using this. So like, let's say for conductivity, you would have instructions, normal values, and also a link on top to a video. We have short videos on everything, just 2-3 minutes to show you how to use each one of the tools in there. So this is really your best friend when you're trying to use these test kits. Because we do have an app and we try to encourage people to go out and use their phone to record data, we include a waterproof cell phone case. If you don't have data or you don't want to use data, when you're out on the water, you can record your information offline. And then when you get home or wherever there's Wi-Fi, you can connect to the internet and it will then upload the data, no problem. We also include a bunch of goodies in here. People often wonder why we have all of these postcards in here. Well, it's because you'll see that when you're out testing the water, a lot of people are going to come talk to you and they're going to ask you questions. And so you have to be prepared to answer them. And it's also nice to just give them a little bit more information. So we've included these little postcards that you can hand out to people if they come and ask you a bunch of questions and they seem really interested. That just has some information about water rangers, why we do what we do, and how they can get involved as well if they want to. So I'm going to walk you through the test kit, but I think everyone knows a lot about what the parameters mean and everything, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the science of it. I'm just going to show you what's in there mostly. Okay, so on top here we have our sample cup. So this is to help you take your water sample, and we include in every test kit what we call a reacher stick, but it is really a selfie stick. And this is one of our users that came up with this. In Nova Scotia, they were having a lot of trouble reaching the water because it was really rocky and they were doing like ocean collection. And so they started using a selfie stick to be able to take the water sample. So you would just open it up, put it at the tip of your cup, and there you go. You have a nice safe way to reach the water. You don't have to get dirty. You just rinse your cup 3 times before you take the sample. And we usually say to take your sample at least 10 centimeters below the surface. So I have 2 samples of water. I unfortunately don't live close to the water. Even though I'm in Montreal, I don't live close to the shore. So I'm just using tap water for this, unfortunately. So I have a little bit of tap water here. I'm just going to pour it out in my sample cup to show you. And I also, for fun, have a little container of demineralized water, just so we can do some comparisons. So the first thing we have in our test kit is a conductivity meter. So that's just to measure electrical conductivity in the water. Sorry, I'm French. Sometimes, like, it's late at night here, I get mixed between the French and the English. So super easy. Just take off the top, press the first button, and it's going to stabilize, and it's going to show really small values because obviously it's in the air. So we have our unit of measure here on top. So we measure in microsiemens, and at the bottom here, you're going to be able to measure your water temperature. So I'm just going to dip it in here. So it's as easy as that. You would just dip it in the water and wait for the little microsiemens symbol to stabilize to be able to take your measurement. Just takes a second. Anyway, and at the bottom here, you have your temperature as well. So you would just write both of those down. There you go, it's stabilized, it started moving again, but it was at about 315, which is quite normal for water around here. And as I said, you can write all of this information in your app, but we also include little notebooks in here where you can write all of your information. This is waterproof paper, so if you drop it in the water, you don't have to worry about losing all of your information, but it's just going to have all of the space that you need to write everything, including the weather for the past 24 hours, because that can really impact everything you're measuring. So that would be it for my conductivity. Just press the button on top, close it. If you can rinse the electrodes when you get home, that's always best. Dip them in distilled water. Oh, I'm not done. I did bring this demineralized water just to show you that these actually work. So I will put it in my demineralized water just to show you. So I should get a super small reading. It shouldn't really change. I dropped 1 microsiemens. So you can see the difference just between the tap water and the demineralized water. So I get about 300 here. I don't know if you guys know sorry, what conductivity readings you might get for lakes close to where you are. Does anyone know?
Yes, they can be anywhere from 500 to 900.
Okay, thanks. That was Bruno, I think.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's quite a bit higher. We do have some people that test in BC, and over there, because they have like the glacier water and everything that comes from the mountains, they can have really, really high readings as well. But what you're telling me is definitely much higher than what I get. And some other people, some folks that work for water rangers are around Ottawa, and they get readings below 100. That's quite normal for them. So we can see that it varies greatly just from region to region, as I'm sure you know. And that's why it's important to test pretty regularly so we can see what these normal values are. We do include an air thermometer just to take air temperature readings. Perfect. The next thing you'll find in these test kits is these test strips. So they are spot test strips. So just for pools, we've actually tested over 15 different ones. We have a little study on our website, and these were the most accurate. So they will measure chlorine in the back. You can see chlorine, pH, alkalinity, and hardness. And people are often like, oh, like, why do you even bother measuring the chlorine? And I like to tell them the story of my brother-in-law, who lives in right outside of Toronto in Etobicoke. And he has a little stream that runs behind the house. And when he takes measurements of that stream, because everyone dumps their pool water in there, he gets measurements that are right here, right this color, which says ideal for a pool. That's what he gets. So sometimes you get surprising results when you look at the chlorine in water bodies. So I'll just show you how these work. So you just shake one out. I'll just do the tap water for this one. These are super easy to use. Just dip it in 2 seconds, take it out, and then you would wait 20 seconds and you would just compare it in the back. So you would start from the top with chlorine. So I have 0 of chlorine. Let me just get a little closer here. And then pH, you would just move it up until you find the sweet spot. And we do always tell people that they can write value, the average of 2 values if they have something in between. So I feel like some of you have probably used these already. So for pH, for example, I would get about 7.5, which is quite normal for around here. My alkalinity would be right between 80 and 120, so I would write down 100. And my hardness is between 0 and 100, so I would write 50. So these are super easy to use. And what else do we have in here? We have this, I'll admit, not everyone uses it, is our Secchi disc. So this is for clarity. Are some of you familiar with the Secchi disc? Do I have to walk you through it? I feel like people know this one a little bit. Okay, I see somebody shaking a head no, so I'll just explain it quickly. So I find this super interesting because it is something that's been used for literally centuries to measure water clarity. And it is just this disc with 2 colors. And so how it would work is you have this reel here which has a tape measure. So you just put your hand here in the back. And this would have to be done where the water is a little bit deep. If you're just like testing with family, it might just be at the end of a dock, but otherwise it could be from a canoe or from a boat. And you would just take it and slowly let it fall down the water and look over, making sure not to have your sunglasses. And when you see the Secchi disc disappear, so the disc itself completely disappears, that would be your clarity. And you just want to bring it up and down a little bit to find the exact spot where it disappears. And you would take your measurements at the top of the water. So let's say my water was right here. I would take my measurement here, which reads 40 centimeters, which would be my clarity. And you would write that down. You can also use it to measure water depth. So this goes to 20 meters. So you just have to make sure that it's not deeper than that. But if you could see the bottom of the water, then you can definitely use it for water depth. So at that same Lake McLaughlin where Kat's dad used to test every summer, I took the clarity over there and I was surprised to find that it was, I think I got a clarity of 8 meters. It was quite deep. And I was really surprised to find that. But some lakes, you can get really deep readings. So I'm going to ask again, does somebody know? Like, do you go out and test the clarity sometimes of lakes around you? Do you have like normal-ish values that somebody wants to share? Not yet. You'll have to come back and tell me when you do go out and test next time. Okay, the last thing we have is our dissolved oxygen little kit in here. So this measures dissolved oxygen, as the name says it. This one's quite fun to do.
Bruno was going to pipe up and.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Bruno.
On the Secchi discs, yeah, it depends on in early springs you have a lot of clarity. Later on, midsummer, you can bring your walk across the water. You have no clarity. Some of the readings, you're lucky if you get half a meter.
Oh wow! And when it's really clear, do you know, like in the like you were saying in the beginning of the season, like what's the difference there?
Oh, you could have upwards of 3-4 meters. Like it really does change a lot. It just depends on the season.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so clarity is definitely one of those measures that changes so much over the season, and it does get influenced so much by weather as well, which is why it's so important to write the weather whenever you do those observations, not only of right now, but of the previous 48 hours. So you get a lot more context and you can take some photos and add them as well. So thanks for sharing that, Bruno. So I was just talking about our little dissolved oxygen test kit. So this is another one that has a color scale. And we have in here these little glass ampoules that I'll just show you. So these are glass, and you can see here, I'm trying to show you here the tip. There's a little white line, and that indicates a weak point in the glass. So what you would do is fill up this little cup, and at the bottom, it's got these little ridges. And what you're gonna wanna do is put the tip in one of these ridges, and then you want to use a prying motion. So you want to push on the side here to break the tip off. And then with a vacuum effect, the water is going to get sucked in, mix in with the reagent, and it's going to measure dissolved oxygen for you. So I have just tap water, which has been sitting here for a little while. So my dissolved oxygen reading won't be accurate because there's been mixing and exchanges with the air. But usually you'd want to do this test really quickly. So you would take a brand new water sample and you would want to try to do the whole thing in under 30 seconds or as fast as you can, which sounds hard, but it's really not that bad. And if you can't do it and you mess up, that's fine. You just try again. There's no harm done. Okay, so I'm going to do it slowly to show you. So I would just fill up my little cup. I'm going to put the tip on the side. You're going to hear a little click noise, and it's going to happen really quickly. So I'll just stop talking now. And there you go, already absorbed the water. So you want to make sure that the little air bubble goes up and down a couple times so that there's good mixing. And after that, we have a little 2-minute timer here, a little sand timer. So we would just start it and wait 2 minutes until we can take our measurement. In the meantime, you can just empty out your cup really slowly in your larger sample cup, just making sure that the glass tip stays in there. You don't want to throw that back in the water. And we do include a little garbage bin in these, so you can just throw out your tip and your used glass samples in there. And your test strip, you can put these back in there, or you can mail them back to us at the end of the season, and we recycle them, doing art projects and stuff. Okay, so we'll pretend that it's been 2 minutes. So I would just remove this, pulling from the top. So this is another color test, which you want to do without your sunglasses, because you don't want that to affect your results. So you would just start, same thing from the bottom, slowly move it up until you find the matching number. And once again, you can write values between 2. So between a 6 and an 8, you would write a 7. And this is one that, because it's glass, light really affects how you see this test. So you got to move around, look a little silly. It's almost like doing a strange dance, just until you're sure of the number you get. So in my case, I see an 8 here. I should mention that we do have a few color tests, so this one and the test strips. So it's always good to compare with somebody else because we all see colors differently. So it's good to see how the other person sees the color. And if you happen to have two different values, then you can take the average between the two and just note that down. Or if it's a really big difference, then you can write that down in the comments below. And maybe you'll find out that you're a little colorblind doing these tests, which has happened before. Okay, so I am just going to put my little ampoule in my little bin. And I would just pack up my test kits, and that's about it for these test kits. That's what we measure, all these different baseline parameters. I'm just gonna make some room here. Give me 1 second. So I keep talking about this app and how you can use it to write out your observations. So I will share it on my phone with you right now. Just give me 1 second to get it started. So you would have to make a profile on the website. And then once you've created the profile, you can use the app. The app is really just to input data. It doesn't do that much else. So you should be able to see my phone. Okay, perfect. So you now all know where I live. It's located me. But usually you would go, let me try to find the spot where I usually test. You would be able to find a spot, and then you would just click. So this indicates two different spots where there's observations. So I would just want to click the one where I'm going to test. So I clicked the one that's more on the right. And then I would just say, add an observation. And then I would be able to associate it with one of the different groups that I'm part of. And then that would upload the observation form like I had showed you before. I can add some wildlife if I see anything interesting that I want to note. You can add some invasive species. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. There's a lot of things you can add in there. The water quality test, so these are all the standard ones that we just walked through. You can add these. There's also the additional water quality test. So if you don't see what you're testing, you can go in there and it would most likely be in here. Any notes, so here it's if you see anything special that you wanna add. Sometimes it's about the weather, a little bit more explanations, or if you had an interesting conversation with someone even, you can write it down in there and share it with us. We do QA every single observation, so we do love to read the notes that people leave us. It's nice. And you can also add some photos. You would just click the add photo button, but I don't want to show you my photo library. You will see that the first thing says reading test strips. So we are working on this machine learning algorithm that can one day, not just quite yet, but it can read the test strips for you to try to remove that element of human error. Sorry, I'm just struggling to find the little paper in my test kit that has the information. Here it is. So I feel like if I do this, it's not going to show you. Oh, okay, you can see that. Okay, perfect. Oh, and of course, I threw out my test strip. Give me 1 second. So you would just put the test strip on this reference card that would be in your test kit, and you would just align it as best you can. Here, it's a little tricky. And then you would capture it. And then when you submit the observation, it would be sent to the algorithm, and it takes a few minutes. It would spew back some numbers for you. They are not super accurate right now, but we're working on it. We need a lot of photos to train it. So the more people upload these, the better it is. So I'm not going to submit this observation because it was just to show you. But anywhere you'd want to add an observation, you could just click somewhere and add it. But it's always best if you're close to a location that's already being tested to go to that specific location and try to test that same spot that everyone else has been testing. And that's why it's really important to describe locations you're testing really well. And that's it for my app demo. That concludes what I had to show everyone. I don't know if there's any questions, but I think we can move on to the question period now. Question and discussion.
Did you say that that app is up and running?
Yes, yes. The app, we've had it for 3-4 years now on iOS and Android.
Okay, that's the one that takes the picture of and analyzes it for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's out for everyone now. Yeah.
Okay, because that's, I mean, the reason I'm thinking about that is because I'm colorblind, and those color tests are absolutely horrible. It's so something that would eliminate my human eye would be very advantageous.
Yeah, as I said, I'll be honest, it's not super accurate for all the parameters. It does some better than the others, but it still needs some work. But we've been working on it for a couple of years now, and it just gets better as time goes on. But we are aware that the color tests are not ideal. But unfortunately, because we also want tests that are really easy to use,
Yes.
we're kind of limited in what we can put in the test kits sometimes.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
I don't know if there's other questions, but we do have some time. I don't want to hijack everything, but I'd love to hear what some of you are doing water related in Manitoba and how you see this that might support you, or if you have any experience with like involving community in water monitoring. I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I can start out a little bit by saying a few things about what we're doing for our area. Jim and I have done some work with, I guess it's Sherbrooke University, Yannick. He's doing a Lake Pulse program, and I'm not sure how that's going right now because we almost haven't been able to talk to him for, well, actually about a year. We did test 6 lakes, and they were lakes that were not tested by his crew that came out. They tested a number of lakes in our area. We also are doing some work on our own lake. We have a small lake here with a community around it called Sandy Lake. And we have managed to borrow a few pieces of equipment. We have a YSI meter, which has a Quattro probe on it, which allows for 4 instruments plus temperature, and we can measure, temperature at different depths and dissolved oxygen and I think conductivity, and I think we have 1 or 2 other measurements. So we're not scientists in biology, but we're trying to get these measurements and put them somewhere so we can go back and look at them and ask people who know more than we do what it all means.
Yeah, that's great. I think I forgot to mention, I'm not much of a salesperson, but we do sell these test kits on the website. And I know that Jim had talked about educational programs, and we do have a big promo science grant from NSTRC right now, where we can give away some test kits for educational purposes, so for youth 18 and under. So if you know anyone that's interested in schools or camps or anything like that, they can definitely get in touch with us, and we can see if they're a good fit for the program. I'll leave my email in the chat box.
I think there's a great opportunity here if we can manage it to get it out to the concept out to the schools and the availability of this, and get our youth connected with our waters here. And that'll be something that I think the biosphere should be looking at going forward, as well as getting whatever lake groups that want to test their waters. I think this makes it quite easy for them. And, being in the Lake Winnipeg basin, they would probably be eligible to get the Lake Winnipeg Foundation to do the phosphorus testing like they are for Sandy Lake at this point. And they also did the phosphorus testing for the 6 lakes that Daryl and I did back in 2019.
Okay, Brian's question was regular testing hasn't been done at Minnedosa Lake on a regular basis, and that lake is part of a river system. So they're thinking that they need to test up the river as well as on our lake. And I guess you could respond to that, Laura, and then they're wondering how much the test kits are.
Sure, thanks for that question. So yeah, it would be great if you could test in 2 locations. Obviously, the more you can do it, the better. So upstream and downstream of where the water is like mixing and arriving, that's great, the way you're saying it. And as for the test kits, the one I just showed you is 345. We are just launching the new ones, which will be the same thing I showed you, but in a backpack form, so it's a little easier to carry than the lunchbox. So they are available for pre-order. We do have a smaller version, which doesn't have the dissolved oxygen. We call it a compact kit, and it's like quite small, and those are 125. So those are the 2. And if you ever have just kids that are interested in trying things out, then we do have our tiny kits, we call them. They're really, really small. And they just have some test strips, a thermometer, and a little booklet with a bunch of information. So that's also great for kids to take them out and show them water testing.
Go ahead, Lawrence.
Laura, our lake is called Picturesque Ditch Lake. It's a relatively small lake, being maybe 3/4 of a mile long, 1/2 a mile wide, 3 different cottage developments on it. And I can see there being some fun here and maybe get some work done. I can easily see that 3 cottages on each side of or 1 cottage on each side of the lake would participate in this and feed it up through to a local web page that features the lake. Would this be on the right track? And I don't see the cost being a problem with this idea, because the people who are going to volunteer are going to pay for the thing, and it becomes a social group. And I get the drift from listening to these YouTubes that there's more testing coming once we get an organization in place. Would that be right?
This sounds great. I'm not sure what you mean by there's more testing coming once you get an organization in place.
We've been worried about phosphates and cutting down of cattails and various, Minnedosa's looking at harvesting weeds and aeration projects. So
okay, I think
tests and just temperature and water clarity.
Yeah. I think Dennis, Daryl, and Jim might know more if there's any local opportunities for extra testing. We unfortunately don't offer anything other than what's in the test kits. But the program you're talking about of starting your group with your community, that sounds amazing, and it sounds great, and it definitely sounds like a really good fit for the platform. But I don't know if Dennis, Jim, or Daryl has anything to add for Lawrence on that.
Well, just before they straighten me out, do these people that do the testing become water rangers, or is there a designation? I'm thinking of the Boy Scout outfit, the Girl Guide outfit. Is it organized something like that?
I think that depends on you. I mean, if you want to add little badges to uniforms, then we do have these little sew-on patches. And on the website, if they create a profile, they do get like a point system, and there's like little badges they get the more they test, which is always fun for kids, but there's no like official certification. Anyone is welcome to use this platform. Whether or not they have the test kit, they can add some other data from other tools that they have to take water quality measurements as well.
I'm thinking of people in kayaks meeting after coffee or whatever, but thanks for the information. All the best.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's Daryl. I think a lot of what Laura's talking about is to get younger people interested in doing tests. Hopefully they'll continue with the tests as time goes on, because one of the things they're trying to do is get some long-term data sets, so data that spans multiple years, so you can look back and see what's going on. So it's like most people are not going to get their hands on a YSI meter, which costs anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000. But if you want to measure dissolved oxygen, there is the ability to do that. Now you're taking a sample from probably the top of the lake, so it's not going to do the same job as a YSI meter can do, but it gets people interested, and maybe they would pursue things a little more if they were able to get a hold of some instruments that do cost a lot of money. Would that be correct, Laura?
Sure. I mean, we do think there is some value to the data that people collect, even if it is in the top layer, of course. So as I said, we do push it to data stream as well. But it is really just what we call baseline data. So it's really just to see what are some normal basic values for your water body, but it's not going to tell you that much if there's a lot of pollution. It's not necessarily going to tell you what kind of contaminants you have or anything like that. But if you see like a really large spike in pH or in conductivity, then you might choose then to do some more lab tests, or to then pay for some lab tests to try to see where that's coming from. So it's kind of just that like baseline to see what's normal and to alert you as to anything that might be a little bit off in the water that you're testing.
Is there any tests that I'm thinking of taking pictures of the water and having artificial intelligence read what the colors and the level of algae that would be in the water that would rate it. And this is kind of what the Lake Pulse is doing in terms of remote monitoring. But I noticed, like with the Living Lakes organization there, they take pictures of the water. And I didn't ask at the time, but it would be nice to know if there was some sort of a spectrum that would read the colors there that would tell you what you have, rather than doing all your algae samples, just to give you an overview of what you're, well, I guess the Seishi disk reading does that to a certain extent, but also surface pictures might be of some kind of value there, because it could be water turbidity of inflowing sediments or whatever that are reducing your Seishi reading, but the green color of your surface photo would be more indicative of the algae growth.
That is a very interesting and smart idea to do. I will say, having worked a little bit on these artificial intelligence thing, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's actually much harder in reality to make it work, and it's quite expensive to develop these things. So I am not aware of somebody doing that with artificial intelligence, but I know people do it on a larger scale with satellite images. Like, that's definitely something that's monitored more. But it would be very interesting to do it. I do know of somebody that can measure, there's an app that can measure water flow just with a photo of the water, and you just kind of indicate the shoreline on the water, which is really interesting, and that does use some artificial intelligence in there. But I haven't seen one yet for algae detection, but it would be very interesting.
Could you give us the name of the app that does the water flow? That's of interest to us.
Yeah, I will look it up, and I'll get back to you on that. They're a European company, I think based in Switzerland. I have it in my emails. I was in touch with them. So I'll just, I can look for it now, but I think I should just take a minute when the meeting's done and find you the name, and I'll send it your way, and you can share it with everyone.
That'd be great.
Well, that's excellent, Laura. Thank you very much for telling us about your program there. I'm hoping that we can put it to use going forward. I guess we should thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been much appreciated, and hope to see you next time. So good evening.